most of the time, everyone in our community takes growth for granted, and particularly if their job doesn't depend on it. And so we need to make sure that there aren't anything, there isn't things out there in the community that are going to impede that growth, that are going to threaten that growth. And traffic could easily be something that would do that if we continue to go down the path that we are headed now. The goals for today, I think on our table you will see some response cards, some idea cards. We're going to conduct this somewhat like a workshop, and as our speakers go through their thoughts, I would like for you all to take notes and give us your thoughts about what can be done and to address the traffic issues we have. The committee will then sift through them and decide what the next council meeting will address. But as far as ideas are concerned, sure, it's important to complete Mac Hatcher. It'd be great if we could complete McEwen Drive all the way over to Sam Ridley Parkway. You know, now Mindy. You know, there are some very big ideas out there that cost a lot of money, and we're not going to ignore those. If you have ideas about how to get those kind of things funded, write them down. If you have something that might seem minor, something like, John, I just remembered totally forgot to throw it to you for a couple of minutes, and I'm going to do that in just a minute. But to give you an example, Rogers and I were talking the other day, and one of the ideas I thought was very creative. But if you look around at the traffic on a normal weekday morning, if you're like my family, mom's loading up one of the kids and taking them to school. When a school bus has just gone by about 30 minutes earlier that would have taken him there perfectly well, and in fact, he rides it home. But we just don't like to get up that early, and so we jump in the car, add another car to the mix out there, and take Johnny to school. If we could talk moms into putting the kids on the school buses, there's no telling how many cars that would take off the roads at rush hour. Now, how do you do that? In our case, I can tell you, we'd have to start schools a little later. Now, I don't know if we can talk Mike Looney or David Snowden into doing that, but those are the kind of ideas that I would like you all, as we're going through the program this morning, to be thinking about. Is there something we can do that might make a difference? So get those cards. We would love to have a name and email address. There's a game going on this morning. If you can figure out which tagline on our logo is a little different this morning, you get a prize. Not really. You get breakfast if you want it. But staff had a little fun with that last night, and traffic is the problem as far as we're concerned. I want to turn the mic over to John Lowry just a minute. This is a great facility, isn't it, for something like this? And John, we just want to thank you for allowing us to have this here. Give us a little commercial about what Spark is all about.
Good deal. Well, thank you, Dave. I appreciate that. It's interesting, and I was just telling Mayor Anderson, it's really interesting having you all here talking about transportation because the transportation challenge in Middle Tennessee is one of the reasons that Spark has been so successful. And that's because as we brought Lipscomb products down to Cool Springs, in fact, we had students that said it a week ago in their exit interviews as they were graduating. Many of these were our MBA students that work over at Nissan. And they said the reason why we're here and we chose Lipscomb is because of this location right here. And what they said was, by offering the Lipscomb MBA product here, you save us somewhere between an hour and an hour and a half a day when we have class if we had to try to get to Lipscomb, Belmont, or Vanderbilt up in Nashville. And so if you think about that, it's great that we're having this conversation. conversation, and doing facilities like this is something that can contribute to the transportation challenge. But one of the things that Dave said that I think is absolutely critical in terms of a context of this conversation is he began talking about family. And time that is spent sitting in traffic in a car is time away from family many times. And so this is a critical issue, because one of the things that makes Williamson County so unique is the family-friendly atmosphere that exists here. It's a great place to raise kids and to be family. And yet, in addition to threatening growth and things like that, the transportation issue also threatens time with family as well. And so we're thrilled that you're here from that perspective, having this conversation, which is a critical conversation. These are the kind of moments that we built Spark for, to where people like yourselves can come and have a place that is properly outfitted to allow you to be really productive. And so we look forward to the next hour and a half as we do that. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, John, very much. As I was driving in a little early this morning, I noticed that it took me between 8 and 9 minutes to get from the house to the office this morning. And just to put that in perspective, I normally now allow 30 minutes, especially if it's anywhere close to rush hour. So we do waste a little of our quality of life time there. I don't know how much diesel fuel I use, but Probably not too much, but anyway, we want to turn our program over to our main speaker, whose bio is in this book, and I realized John was between me and my notes a minute ago, so pardon me for rummaging around here. Michael Skipper is the chairman, or the executive director of the MPO. That's the Metropolitan Planning Organization. It's a federally funded organization that is charged with, and I'm looking at him to make sure I get this right, but with choosing where to spend the federal dollars that come to Middle Tennessee for roads and transit. Is that reasonably accurate? I'm not going to read some here. He's got more than 15 years of experience in metropolitan area policy and planning. He's authored and championed state legislation to provide additional authority to Tennessee's large urban areas to address their transit needs, and developed an award-winning staff overseeing the expansion of the MPO's scope. Prior to his work in Nashville, he directed the public transportation work for an MPO in Central Florida and served as a research consultant with firms in Austin, Texas, and Seattle. Glad to hear he's got his geography degree from the University of Tennessee and a master's from the University of Texas at Austin. Got many honors and awards for the work he's done, and we're extremely pleased, Michael, to have you with us here this morning. If you would welcome him to our...
Can you hear me? Is this, good morning, Williamson County. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning, and I'm excited to be part of this conversation. As Dave just mentioned, the MPO sort of has been in charge of trying to figure out how we spend federal dollars, invest those dollars into our transportation system. We typically sort of codify those decisions through what we call the Regional Transportation Plan, very creatively named. It's a long-range transportation plan that looks ahead 25 years into the future. It's fiscally constrained, so as part of that process, we do the impossible task of trying to figure out how many federal and state dollars we're going to have in our region over that period of time, and then apply those dollars to our most significant priorities on the transportation system, and publish that through the document called the Regional Transportation Plan. We adopted our last plan back in 2010 that looked ahead to the year 2035, and we're about to launch the process to update that plan to look ahead to the year 2040. So this is a really good opportunity for me to hear from you all directly what your most pressing priorities are, and I'm pleased to be here to be part of the panel discussion and the broader conversation that we had this morning. I've known these two mayors, and David and Bob, for about 7 years now, and have worked closely with them on transportation all across the region. So this morning, I think, I don't have all the answers. I think actually one of the reasons why I'm interested in being here is to hear what your answers to the challenge may be. But what I like to do on the front end is I always travel with 80 to 100 slides, and many of you in the room have probably seen most of them by now, but I think the slides do a good job of framing the conversation about how we ought to be investing in our transportation system. A lot of times when we're thinking about the future, we're thinking about transportation and we forget about sort of the pressures that we're facing. They're going to lead to a different future than the present time that we have today. So as we're thinking about transportation plans, just sort of strongly encourage you to think beyond your daily commute and imagine the generations that will come after you as a way of helping to influence the types of investments that we make into the infrastructure, which will ultimately support growth and development for several decades to come. So with that, can you all see that? Oh yeah, you can, all around the room. The MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, as Dave mentioned, is a federally funded organization. So we're a public agency. We're a multi-county agency. Our history dates back to the late 60s, and we were created at a time when MPOs were established nationally. MPOs exist in every urban area of America. Just like every state has a DOT, every urban area has an MPO. And the MPO, in our case, is parts of 7 counties. We're about to expand to include all of Robertson and Murray counties, but we're parts of 7 counties currently. But when we do transportation planning within Middle Tennessee, we like to look at all 10 of these counties. These 10 counties that you see on the map here are the 10 counties that are associated with the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce's Partnership 2020 effort, Cumberland Region Tomorrow, Leadership Middle Tennessee, the Middle Tennessee Mayor's Caucus, all really look at that 10 county area. And then the Regional Transportation Authority, which we may talk about a little bit later on, who is charged with implementing a regional mass transit system, is also sort of scope to deal with growth and development and transit needs across those 10 counties. But our MPO is specifically related to those 7 counties. And that geography, for you to understand, is important because when it comes to deciding where federal dollars go, our jurisdiction is those 7 out of the 10 counties, even though I may reference the 10 county region from time to time. MPOs are an interesting organization. They're inherently a ball of conflict. I mean, it's basically the federal government saying, we're going to delegate the decision-making authority of how to use federal dollars into the transportation system to the local level, but the string attached is that they don't redistribute the gas tax that you pay at the pump back to cities and counties to make those decisions individually. They send the money back to the regions, metropolitan areas, and require local governments to work together to make those decisions together. And for a variety of reasons, I think that's good policy, and you'll get to see that illustrated here in a second. But as you probably already can imagine, the sort of transportation challenge doesn't stop at city limits or county boundaries, and many of the solutions that we need to implement are solutions that would require multi-jurisdictional collaboration. And so that's what the MPO represents, is this place where cities and counties, including transit agencies that operate within those cities and counties, work with state leadership and federal agencies to make decisions about how federal dollars can be spent within the metropolitan area. The last plan we adopted, I referenced earlier, is the 2035 Regional Transportation Plan. This was adopted in late 2010. It fiscally constrained a list of projects scheduled between the years 2010 and 2035. This is the prevailing public policy in Middle Tennessee and is really what is directing the Transportation Improvement Program, the work program that implements this plan that the MPO adopts, which feeds into the state's Transportation Improvement Program, or the STIP, which is a federally required document that the state DOT produces on a statewide basis that is built upon the MPO's TIP and then the state work program that's approved by the legislature each year, which is a 3-year work program. So that plan, we estimated to have about $6 billion in revenue from federal, state, and local sources over that 25-year period of time to invest in transportation infrastructure. And what the plan does is it specifies how that $6 billion would be put to work to address the challenges that we forecast over that future. $6 billion sounds like a lot of money, and it would be a lot of money if it were sitting in my bank account, but when it comes to investing in transportation infrastructure, you'll see very clearly as we go along that it is a fraction of the dollars that we really need to be putting into the
infrastructure to address the problems that we have out there today and that we forecast into the future. We have the plan, which is that long-range document, the public policy. We implement that plan through the work program that I just referenced. So we, every couple of years, adopt a short-term work program, spans 4 or 5 years. It's sort of the short-range component of that plan. And this is where we're putting actual grant dollars to specific projects and then specifying how those projects would be delivered. So in the TIP, the Transportation Improvement Program, you'd be able to see what year we're going to do preliminary engineering or right-of-way acquisition or final design or construction on a roadway project, for example, and specifically how we're going to be funding those projects from the federal grants that come to our region. Federal grants come to our region a couple of different pathways. Some of those grants are sub-allocated directly to our region. They pass through the state DOT, but the discretion for how to spend those dollars rests solely with our executive board, which is comprised of city and county mayors across Middle Tennessee. That's our board of directors. Other federal dollars are retained by the state DOT or TDOT, and they are charged with trying to figure out how to invest those dollars statewide. The way that works on a statewide basis is that TDOT works with the MPOs to identify the priority projects that would be competing for those statewide dollars, and then they ultimately prioritize those projects on a statewide basis, work with the legislature to make those decisions, and then we incorporate those projects into the plan and into the work program once those decisions are made. So, and in the end though, and this is a point that's often lost on local communities, in the end, if it's a federal dollar involved in a project, whether that's a federal dollar sub-allocated to our region or a federal dollar retained by the state, ultimately, your local leadership has to authorize that dollar to be spent on the project. So that's a look at the plan that was adopted in 2010, and then the work program that spanned the years 2011 through 2015 had about $1 billion worth of federal, state, and local revenue being put onto roadway, transit, walking, and biking projects across the 7-county area that I referenced earlier. This is a look at the cost-feasible roadway map that was associated with our 2035 plan. This is available online. We try to be very transparent with everything we do, but most specifically the projects that are in our plan and our work program. I don't know how well you can pick up. Can you see you see the red lines, obviously. Can you see the yellow lines on that map? So the plan, this is fiscally constrained, so it's not just simply a wish list of all the things that we want to do over a 25-year period of time. And if you were to study this map a bit closer, you'd see that the red lines are the projects that we think we can afford between now and 2035. And we've sorted them based on planning horizon. So there's a handful of projects that we think we can accomplish by 2015, a handful of projects we think we can accomplish by 2025 and 2035. It's sort of the scheduling of the projects according to the need and the revenue available. What you can't pick up on the screen, but we'll be able to pick up once you get a copy of this map, is a lot more yellow lines on the map that represent additional transportation projects that our group, working with local communities and TDOT, felt were worthwhile to invest in. We just didn't have the revenue to do so through the fiscally constrained plan. So that's a feature of the plan that I think you'll be interested in studying as we continue the conversation about what ought to be in our next plan. The other thing that the plan did was, for the first time ever really in our region's history, it began to position the idea of investing in a mass transit system to augment the roadway system as a leading public policy priority. The plan does more than just say we need mass transit in Middle Tennessee. It was really the first attempt to work with stakeholders and local communities across the region to figure out specifically what that means for each community. And so the plan includes a bold new vision for mass transit. This is not part of our fiscally constrained plan, unfortunately. The funding mechanisms for transit are a little bit more complicated and lacking than they are for roadways in general. But it does sort out, sort of what the most appropriate solution in terms of mass transit would be suitable for communities across the 10-county region. And I won't dwell too much on this because I want to get into some of the growth and development forecasts that we're rolling out now to frame conversations about what we ought to be doing with the next plan. But this is a pretty big deal. I mean, this is the vision that's sort of guiding conversations right now about mass transit throughout Tennessee, and really is not sort of a one-size-fits-all approach. It's sophisticated enough to understand that we ought to probably have rapid transit to Franklin, connecting Franklin and Nashville, Nashville and Gallatin, and Nashville and Murfreesboro, and that's a type of service that probably wouldn't be suitable for a more rural corridor like Nashville to Dixon. So for the Nashville to Dixon corridor, the vision calls for over-the-road coaches with premium amenities for folks to have a convenient and comfortable commute into downtown Nashville without the major capital investment of building a dedicated lane or a fixed guideway. We do also have in the long-range vision the idea of extending commuter rail services up to Clarksville at some point. We're about to start a major study to look at the feasibility of that now and what the cost and ridership would be to see if the cost benefit is there to get that project going. But I encourage you to look at this and ask any questions that you might have about it, be today or after this meeting, because I think as we continue to get into identifying solutions for our future, more and more you're going to see that a lot of cost benefit for some of the roadway and transit projects that we're evaluating are going to be sort of leaning towards the things that are on this map. Also on this map are the idea of expanding urban fixed route services. I think a lot of people find the regional mass transit lines, the rapid transit lines that might connect Franklin and Nashville attractive, but oftentimes they forget about supporting the local bus systems that ultimately connect folks to their home and their businesses at the local level or from their home to that major regional line in the first place. And so as we continue our conversations about mass transit, it's fun to talk about the capital projects that would be new to our region, but we need to continue to support the local transit systems like the Franklin Transit Authority and the Nashville MTA if we're to make those successful. We've recently converted the mass transit vision into this tube-style schematic map that gives people a better sense of how they might navigate a regional system in the future. There's a lot of reasons why mass transit is part of our regional plan, and I'll show you these next few slides, then we can come back and talk about transit later, but I won't dwell too much on it. But a lot of folks that we engage with understand the importance of integrating mass transit into our regional transportation plan. But for a lot of people, it's hard to see how it would be viable today. And so I try to remind people that we're planning for a 25-year period of time, and the amount of time it takes to do a project, even a roadway project, is about 10 to 12 years to get a project done. So if you consider that, the time you decide to do something and the time it's going to be open, the amount of change that's going to happen within the community, it makes sense to begin thinking about these things earlier than you would otherwise expect to think about them. But mass transit is important because of traffic congestion and rising costs for energy. It's important because we've got changing demographics. There was a report released just this week showing that the millennial generation is not that interested in being in their cars. And they're choosing to live in places with transportation choices. And if they're our future economy, and actually they're driving a lot of our economy now, we've got to cater to that demographic. Retiring baby boomers are very similar in terms of their style choices as millennials. And if we're just thinking about the roadway system or providing transportation through automobile transportation only, we're forgetting about a huge part of our population. Then finally, we think about mass transit as being important to our continued economic competitiveness. If you think about the success that the Nashville metropolitan area and Williamson County is certainly a shining star within the metro area for driving our economy, and then you compare our region with the regions that we compete with for jobs and talent for those jobs. Our regions, competitive regions like Austin, Charlotte, Denver, those places that we directly compete with, are investing in mass transit, trying to tap into those talent pools that are out there within the millennial generation. Also, we're way behind on this, so that's another reason why we're talking about transit and talking about it pretty aggressively. We've, compared to our peer regions, have done well investing in roadways. Per capita, we have more roadway lane miles than most of our peer regions across the nation. On this chart, sort of dominating over our peer regions per capita lane miles, with the exception of Memphis. But on the transit level of service, we're falling way behind. And we aren't giving people the opportunity to make the choice to use transit over driving in their car everywhere they want to go. So that, I just wanted to put that out there to help, if you're not already thinking that way, to consider that thought as we go forward into our conversation. So with that, I'd like to sort of wrap up my remarks before we turn it over to the panel discussion, showing you some of the forecasts that are really driving the traffic congestion maps that are feeding into the planning process now. Look at population growth. You've all heard by now, I'm sure a million times, that by the year 2035, we expect to have 1 million more people living in Middle Tennessee. Our most recent forecast for the year 2040 has our 10-county Middle Tennessee region going over 3 million people in population. And we like to compare that to give you a sense of what that looks like. We like to pull out communities across the nation that are already that size. So basically, by the year 2040, and even by the year 2035, we'll be bigger than the Denver metropolitan area and approaching the size of the Seattle metropolitan area. So if you don't think that transit and walkable communities are important to Middle Tennessee now, look at those communities and look how they've integrated those approaches as a way of sustaining their prosperity and dealing with traffic congestion. And Denver in particular is a really good futuristic peer for us because we can track sort of over a 15-year period how they've approached dealing with their transportation challenges and what they've done step by step to be able to get to the point where they are now, which is really a region that represents a place that's really got it right, at least most recently with respect to transportation investments. So as an MPO who is interested in trying to figure out the best way to use our dollars to get the most bang for their buck, it's not good enough for us just to understand how many people are going to live here in the future. We need to understand where within our region folks are going to live and work. We start by looking at county-based populations. I'm going to show you the forecast that we have for our counties in Middle Tennessee within a statewide context. This is a statewide map. Can you guys see the county outlines from where you're sitting? All right, so that black outline there, that is the 10-county region I referred to, and then the red, smaller outline is the MPO footprint. This is 2010 population distributed across the state today. Middle Tennessee, those 10 counties represent about 27% as of 2010 of the state's 6.5 million people. But by the year 2040, and these are national forecasts, we expect that the 10-county region of Middle Tennessee will represent more than a third of the state's population, with Rutherford and Williamson County both leapfrogging Chattanooga-Hamilton in terms of size, both being about the size of Nashville-Davidson County today by the year 2040. That's pretty significant. Implications for transportation that we'll talk about here in a second. So this is the look at 2040, and this is the net between 2010 and 2040 as we see it now. So we expect about 2.5 million more people in the state of Tennessee over this 30-year time frame, with more than half of that population coming here to Middle Tennessee. Again, this is what's most notable about this is just the significant growth that we're expecting to see in Rutherford and Williamson counties. And then this is a look at population rankings by county in the year 2040, and without any real magic on our part, what sort of pops off of this map is that 10-county region, so this notion of Middle Tennessee driving the state's economy is one that is expected to continue well into the future. Again, these are national forecasts, not my staff just creating the forecast that we'd like to see for Middle Tennessee. The population is also changing, and you are all versed on this. Business folks understand that there's a changing market out there with respect to demographics and lifestyle choices. At least in Davidson County, we expect there to be no majority demographic by the year 2040 with respect to ethnicity and race. Age distribution is changing. We're becoming an older population that will require different products in the market. But generally speaking, the biggest impact that the changing market is having in terms of demographics is that folks just aren't that interested in being in their car anymore. They want to be closer to where they work, closer to amenities. And one of the things that we're beginning to realize is that the housing stock that we've built over the last couple of decades isn't really matching up with the future demand for housing that we see out there. One of the reasons why this is the case is that folks are either not having kids or waiting longer in life to have children. And if you think about the influence that having a child has on where you decide to live, whether it be school districts or having a yard, and you remove that influence from the decision-making process, or you minimize minimize that influence. You can begin to understand that the more recent trends of urbanization in downtown Nashville, but also in places like Franklin and Gallatin, are likely to continue because of those demographic shifts. And we also do employment forecasts at the county level, and expect the state's 30%, a little bit more than 30% of the state's employment to be located here in Middle Tennessee as well. So then the next step that we go through in order to get a sense of where traffic congestion is going to be, because that's what everybody is interested in, is try to model where those people are going to live and work at the parcel level, so the sub-county level. And so I'm going to open the hood a little bit and show you how we go about that. So we start with these are the 7 counties in the MPO area. Are you all familiar with the geography? Williamson County is on here. So this is one of the first steps that we take with our land use model. We look at the existing development pattern, and on this map, the darker areas are parcels or pieces of land that are already developed in the 7-county area. And then we overlay the environmental features, places that can't be developed because of some kind of environmental constraint. It might be too steep of a slope, it might be a floodplain or a waterway, it might be a land bank, it could be a state park, public park. It's property that can't be developed in the future through physical characteristics or some kind of regulation. We then look at the future land use policies that are adopted at the local level. So the MPO has no authority over land use policy, but we do work with local governments to help optimize that land use policy by analyzing their land use policies with their neighboring communities to measure the implications of that policy on things like infrastructure. We feed back those findings back to local governments to help them optimize land use policy to minimize the impact that we are placing on infrastructure. So this is the generalized future land use across the entire region. So this is everybody's land use plans quilted together. And this is a key part of our model. This is the part of the model that's dictating with our forecasts what type of use would exist on a parcel. We marry that with another public policy influence, which is expressed here in terms of character areas. The character areas include things like urban core, general urban, suburban, rural, traditional town centers. And these character areas are used to represent the land development regulations that exist at the local government that dictate sort of building heights, setbacks, parking requirements, so the things that the developers have to consider that ultimately define the capacity of a piece of land to support people or jobs. There's ultimately a fixed capacity of land to support people based on these public policies. We also look at market influences, and we built a market suitability submodel that goes into this that was constructed along with the best developers in the region, and where we could get data to reflect the characteristics of land that made it attractive to a developer for a particular type of development. We try to replicate that through the model. And so this is a suitability analysis showing in the most red areas where the most attractive land is for growth and development into the future. And this is normalized by county. So this is attractiveness within a county, not from county to county across the region. And then, okay, so that's the model. So what I'll show you now is what happens when you throw, 1,000,003 people on top of 1,000,007 people in terms of the distribution of that growth across the landscape. This is a look at this is the easy to look at map. This is a look at the 2010 development pattern, that first map there. And then what you're seeing here in these subsequent maps are the parcels, the individual properties that are expected to be affected by growth in each subsequent decade. So between 2010 and 2020 is they're reflected on that second map. So those are the properties that are out there across the region that are expected that aren't developed today, that are expected to be affected by development in the future based on the forecast. So that's 2020, 2030, and 2040, so what's happening each decade. That doesn't look too bad, but the cumulative of those forecasts have sort of painted a different picture. And so the accumulation of that growth and development across our landscape a much scarier image of what our future could look like based on the way the model is seeing it. So the 2010 development pattern, 2020, 2030, 2040. Now I want to be honest about this. This isn't a density map. This isn't like the black doesn't necessarily represent all the places that people are going to live. But what this is basically saying is that just about, if we let things continue on as they are now based on the current public policies and the way we're investing in infrastructure, most property is likely to be affected by development in one way or the other. And for a lot of people who live in Middle Tennessee, that's not a good thing. We cherish our rural countryside. We've got a lot of prime agricultural lands out there that we want to protect for a variety of reasons, a lot of them being economic. And so this is sort of a wake-up call for maybe how we're doing business a bit. This is a look at that map translated in terms of number of people and jobs per square mile or acre. It doesn't matter, it's a density map showing you the same forecasts. I'm going to do the cumulative by decade. This is 2010, density across the region. This is 2020, this is 2030, and this is 2040. So pretty impressive growth, don't you think? Pretty far-reaching growth. I think our forecasts are still seeing this continuation of sort of the urban sprawl that you've all heard about. In fact, we recently ranked the second most sprawling major metro area in America, just behind Atlanta. And I don't know about you, but every time I compare Middle Tennessee to Atlanta, people start yelling at me. So Atlanta is like the poster child of what we don't want to become. And so I think in recent years, though, through the leadership of the mayors that are in front of you and the business community, we've really kind of rethought our public policy and in terms of how public policy decisions were driving this outcome. And as a result, the forecast that we have for you this time is a bit better picture than the forecast we had for you back when we did the 2035 plan, but it's still a daunting sort of idea that we've got to deal with. This is here a different way of looking at density. This is we've converted the data to these little pixels that give you a better sense of where growth is happening within the region. So you can see, you can pick your favorite part of the region and see how you may fare over the future. This slide here is the net employment allocation across the region. So this is each decade where we are expecting employment to go across the region. This is where we expect households to be going across the region by decade, and then this is the cumulative growth by decade across the region. So you can see the relative, the contrast that exists across the region among the various communities in Middle Tennessee. So here's the bottom line, though, when it comes to what our mission is as an organization. We've got to then now figure out how those people are going to get around, and so we've got another model that does that. It's our travel demand model, also creatively named. These are the major roadways in the model that we monitor and forecast congestion for. This is congestion as we saw it in 2010, and this is congestion that is based on volumes. This is not congestion caused by accidents on the roadway, which, by the way, are about 50% of the reason why we have congestion is incidents. So I'm not even talking about that congestion. I'm just talking about congestion caused by too many cars on the roadway. And if you were closer to the screen, you can see that there's two different color reds on the map. The darker red is our routes that are congested based on sort of a traditional measure of congestion, which is volume to capacity, or sort of the relationship between the number of cars you have and the number of space you have for those cars. The darker red indicates that we're over capacity, physically speaking. The lighter red represents where we are seeing travel speeds that are below what we think people can tolerate, travel speeds at which people would say, I think this roadway is congested, right? So people don't care about that relationship between number of cars on the road and the roadway lane miles. They care about what their experience is. So that's what those lighter red lines mean. So that's 2010. That's the kind of the good news I have for you. And then this is 2040. This is 2040 after. Remember the TIP that I talked about, the Transportation Improvement Program, the $1 billion that were programmed for roadway and transit projects for the short term? This is assuming we build out those projects, but that we stop investing in transportation until the year 2040. Of course, that's hopefully impractical scenario, but you never know. But even after we build out all of the the roadway projects in our $6 billion transportation plan, and that's those projects there in blue, overlaid on top of that 2040 congestion. So that's $6 billion. This is the resulting congestion. So, we're not changing the map much, is what I'm trying to say. And maybe I don't even have to try to say that because you can see that for yourself. So, but again, I like to be transparent and honest about things, so we don't want to leave you with the impression that every red line is equal. I mean, some of those projects are improving your travel experiences by minimizing or decreasing the level of congestion, even though it maybe still shows up congested, it's getting better. So what this map does is shows you the severity of congestion. So the moderate congestion there, the yellow, is where we begin to reflect the red lines on the previous maps. This map is also different because the previous maps were link-based or roadway-based congestion maps. These maps here are taking into account all the roadways within a quarter-mile area. So it's sort of a more network-based congestion that we're showing you here on a scale of severability. So these are sort of area congestion at the quarter-mile scale. Does that make sense? Yeah, and I think that's a better way of looking at congestion because places tend to be congested, not just roadways. So that's 2010 congestion and severability, and then this is 2040 congestion after implementing the $6 billion plan. And so even trying to be honest about the data, it's still, does that look much better to you? Yeah, so that's the challenge that we have. And to give you a sense of how it may impact your life by way of numbers, we've got a lot of performance measures that we track. I just want to point out a couple here for you. This VHT stands for vehicle hours traveled, and then we do that per capita. And that's basically the average amount of time that people are spending in their car. And today it's about 0.8 hours. So that's where we are in 2010. By the year 2040, as a result of that congestion, we expect that to go up by 113%. So what that basically means is we expect you to spend more than twice as much time in your car by the year 2040. Based on our trending future. And you would think, well, maybe it's because I'm driving more, right? Maybe I'm driving more miles, and that would be wrong because we are not actually expecting people to drive more miles. And if anything, we may be seeing a decline in the distances that people are driving, a lot of that being driven by people wanting to get out of this congestion. This is due because of the 26% reduction in average travel speeds across the network. And again, this is volume-based. This is volume-based only, so this isn't congestion caused by accidents. So the real story may be a bit worse, which is, by the way, we are trying to, as a matter of policy, invest more into safety projects. And first and foremost, is because we want to save lives. Traffic fatalities are the leading cause of death for young adults, but it contributes significantly to congestion. So when we do safety analysis, it's mostly for health, but even where we're not seeing fatalities or injuries on the roadway network, it's still nice to analyze crash data, which could be sort of be a predictive component to where congestion may be occurring. So if we're seeing recurring crashes at a location, whether they're causing injuries or fatalities or not, it's still a worthwhile investment to fix whatever the design flaw is or the behavioral flaws are that are leading to those crashes, because that's a congestion management strategy if you consider that about half the congestion is caused by those crashes. So that's again, to be truthful, this is if we don't do anything between 2015 and 2040. This is after we build out the $6 billion transportation plan. And what we see is that there really, at a system level, aren't significant changes occurring after $6 billion worth of investments in any of these measures. There's an 8% increase and a 113% increase in VHT, but we're not reducing it by 8 percentage points. We're reducing it by 8%, which is much smaller than, a little bit smaller than 8 percentage points. So really the lesson learned here, and the mayors began to pick up on this as we adopted the 2035 plan, was that $6 going to be difficult for us to build our way out of congestion, and that's a refrain that many people are becoming familiar with. In some cases, it's because the fiscal reality doesn't allow us to build all the roads that we need. The other reality is that in an urban area, and you have urban areas in Williamson County, you don't have the right-of-way anyway. I mean, you would have to wipe out the businesses, that the whole reason why you have transportation infrastructure in the first place, to widen the roadway to deal with the congestion directly. So more and more, this is why we're thinking about good land use planning, better coordination with the private sector, and diversification of our transportation portfolio so that people have a way around this. And this is ultimately, this is a big city problem as we understand it, but as we are seeing in the forecasts, whether we like it or not, that's our trajectory, is ultimately becoming a big city and having big city problems. This has a toll on us financially already today. The Texas Transportation Institute releases a report every couple of years that ranks the metro areas in terms of congestion. We typically rank about 30th worst congested metro area in the country, but that still translates into a lot of expense just in the Nashville-Davidson urbanized area, which includes Franklin and most of Williamson County, but not all of the 10-county region. We spend about $800 million a year in lost and burned fuel and lost time just sitting in traffic congestion. Multiply that out over 25 years, that's $20 billion over 25 years, right, assuming that gas prices don't go up, and compare that $20 billion figure with the $6 billion figure I told you we had to invest in transportation infrastructure to help solve some of the problem. So the indirect costs, and in some cases direct costs, of an inefficient transportation system are just dwarfing the dollars that we're putting into our infrastructure to help alleviate some of the problems. We're also seeing spillage now over into into just sort of household spending. On average, 18% of American households spend, or on average, household Americans spend about 18% of household budgets on transportation costs. In Middle Tennessee, it's much worse. Over 90% of our households are spending more than 20% of their income on transportation costs. Compare that with a place like Denver, which has diversified its portfolio, provided multiple housing choices and lifestyle options for its residents, and there we're seeing about 42% of their households spending as much of their income on transportation costs as we are. And when we think about keeping Middle Tennessee affordable, and we are starting to lose control over this, by the way. If you haven't been in the real estate market recently, our affordability on housing and rents have almost sort of dissolved over the last couple of years. But we've traditionally been known as a very affordable place from a housing standpoint. But when you mix in the cost of transportation getting around the region, we begin to be a little bit less attractive than some other metropolitan areas across the nation. A lot of this has to do, at least on the transportation side, with how far apart everything is, how far away from work we have chosen over our history to live. In fact, that's what's driving this national ranking, which ranks us the worst commute peak period commute in the nation when you consider congested and uncongested portions of that commute. So the average number of minutes we're spending on our commute is, according to this measure, worst in the nation. It's not all in congestion. We're about 30th in terms of congestion, but in terms of the total amount of time we're spending in our cars, it's pretty bad. Again, it's driven by sort of the distances that we're driving, which is also reflected in our commute data. 1 in 2 Middle Tennesseans outside of Nashville work in a different county than they live. 1 in 3 in Middle Tennessee if you include Davidson County. And then finally, I'll just say that this isn't just a transportation problem. This is really a community building problem. It's really ultimately affecting other parts of our lives. You all are aware of the national obesity epidemic that is beginning to have a heavy toll on finances at all levels of government and also the business community and individual families. The epicenter for that obesity epidemic happens to be in the southeast part of the U.S. A lot of this is attributed to food intake, as you might imagine. It's also that we've built communities in the southeastern part of the U.S. different than other parts of the nation. A lot of the communities in the southeast were built around the automobile, very sprawling land development pattern. It leads to a lot of sedentary time that you spend in your car that sort of minimizes the level of physical activity that we're getting on a daily basis. And if you think transportation infrastructure costs a lot of money, it doesn't compare to the cost of rising healthcare costs as a result of unhealthy population. So with that, I think, Dave, how much time do we have for the panel discussion? Are we okay? Any questions right off the bat, or anything I said that you just completely don't believe that you want to challenge me on? Or that's the thing about predicting the future is you'll have to wait and see if I'm right or not.
Cindy warned me last couple of days ago that we're trying to do too much this morning. And after hearing that, I needed to spend 30 minutes Q&A at Michael. And my apologies for doing so much and maybe being a little ambitious with the agenda this morning. So I'm going to continue to move on through and introduce our panel, and then give them 4 or 5 minutes to comment about what they think it would take to keep us from being another Atlanta. And then we'll open it for question and answer. Michael, thank you so much. If there is ever any doubt that in your minds that we had a problem, I think you're probably convinced by now. Our first panelist, Rogers Anderson, needs no introduction in this room, but Rogers just completed a 2-year session as chairman of the MPO, and so he not only has the seat from the mayor's office here in the county, but a metropolitan 30,000 square foot view as well. Mayor Ken Moore, City of Franklin, again, needs no introduction. He is also, though, the chairman of the Mayor's Caucus, I believe they call it here in Williamson County, and they are working hard to look at these same issues. Dave Parker started as a city engineer with the City of Franklin in 1983. Now, how many of you were born after 1983? Dave, when I served a brief period as an alderman in Franklin and some time on the planning commission, Dave was our guide on the major thoroughfare plan, and he's been putting together major thoroughfare plans for this area for many years. Bob Murphy, president of RPM Transportation Consultants, and he and I go back to those days when he was a young child, almost doing traffic studies all over this county. So I'd like for you all to take 4 or 5 minutes apiece and just comment on what you think the answers are. I'm sure each one of you could spend an hour doing that, but if you would, after that, we'll open it up for questions. Rogers?
Well, thank you, Dave, and thanks to the Sparks Center for allowing us to come here and voice some concerns and also give you some of the ideas. And to Michael, you can see that for our hourly meetings, we call ABC Day every month, which is a group of cities and counties to get together. We do MPO, RTA, Regional Transportation Authority, GNRCs. We call all of these initials, and we have to hold Michael to 10 or 15 minutes. And we've never been able to do that, and so congratulations, you've been able to do that once again. Just throw it out there, and what an idea. Let me give you 3 points that I think would help our and I'm going to use the word transportation/congestion in Williamson County. First of all, sooner or later, we've got to find dedicated funding. That's my #1 comment. How we do that, I'm not real sure, because most of you in this room will understand county dollars go to county roads, city dollars go to city projects, and you've heard about the feds in the state. So sooner or later, we've got to be able to surround our area, our community, through some kind of dedicated funding. We either steal from this pot because all funds are precious in our counties and cities, whether you're talking about public education. We feel very strong about that in Williamson County. Law enforcement, public safety, all of these things go in to make up this community that's very affordable from a tax standing position that we have. My second thing is better working relationships, and that's not a negative, is that Michael's comments directly affect cities. MPO is a city for the most part. The counties are involved, but it's hard to get county dollars back into cities and cities back over to counties. So it goes back to funding. Maybe there's some ways that the legislators that are up on the Hill would revisit just the simple purchasing of gravel. You may not think that's a big component, but when you're building roads, gravel is a huge component, but we're not allowed at our rock quarry, for an example that we've got in Williamson County, to allow the cities to purchase those gravel dollars. And you say, well, why not? And I was telling Dave this. If you're outside the metropolitan form of government, if you're outside the metropolitan lines of Franklin, Brentwood, Spring Hill, Thompson Station, Fairview, Nolensville, those county residents, we pay a road tax. It's built into our instrument of $2.31. So if you look at your tax bill, the folks that live inside the cities do not pay that tax bill. So if I could pick on Judy Hayes, who's the county commissioner, and Cheryl, they're both county residents, and they pay this nickel on that 231 that folks in Franklin do not pay for, and I cannot legally, bindingly take those dollars and send them back over to the cities to help. We also own that rock quarry, and therefore if Ken or Dave Parker or any of these needed to purchase rock, gravel, then that would present a problem because they can't do it. Now, from the business perspective, too, I've got to deal with LoJacks. So when you start saying all of those things, well, why can't cities and counties figure out a thing to do? Then I get into the private sector because they have to bid, all of us have to bid out our products from culverts to gravel to asphalt to bridge work. And so that's so critical that we protect the private side, but at the same side of that, to me, that's a part of the funding. And I guess my third comment would be is to allow cities and counties all throughout Williamson County, and for the first time just in the last couple of years, that cities and counties sit down at the table and see where we're all building these roads, where we're going to put the future roads in our overall countywide transportation plan. And you say, well, that isn't being done. Only in the last 3 or 4 years has that really been an effort that you might hire or have some consultant to say, well, Franklin's going to road here, Brentwood's going to run road here. What's the county going to do? Because they're going to dead end it at the end of the city lines. Remember what I said, cities can't build roads in the county. Interesting, I'm not sure how many of you have asked me, Ken already plugged me with it. Yes, day before yesterday, we had an election in this county, and I had, I don't know, 100 and some odd write-in votes, and the majority of those, Ken, tell them what the write-in was.
Mac Hatcher.
So, now, how many of you in here believe that Mac Hatcher is in Williamson County corporate limits? Just raise your hand. How many of you know that that's in Franklin? I have absolutely no jurisdiction. I have influence. I have as much contact with Commissioner Schroer as Ken does, but I have no ability to write one penny to help fund that road. But it's a message they're sending our taxpayers, our residents, and they're right, they have a right to do that. But they're sending a message, figure out solutions for, in this case, Mac Hatcher and other road projects. So,
Right.
Dave, that's my comments. 3 things.
Thank you.
Me?
Ken?
Good. Well, good morning to everybody, and I guess I'm bringing a perspective of chairman of the Mayor's Caucus, and this will be the 3rd year that I've been honored to lead the Mayor's Caucus. Mayor's Caucus represents
Pull
1.6
that mic a little
million.
closer, if you will.
Sure.
Thank you.
What I said initially wasn't important, so I'll just continue on from there. The Mayor's Caucus represents 1.6 million people. It represents 10 counties, 40 mayors, and the idea was stolen from one of our competitor cities, Denver. Denver found that they had a transit issue, and their mayors came together and formed a caucus, and through that mayor's caucus evolved the ability to study transit on a regional basis and also to come up with a way to fund it. So Denver is way ahead of us as far as that. Our caucus started about 5 years ago, and the bulk of the discussions have centered around transportation, even though we have identified other issues from water to tourism, just to mention a couple that we've also talked about. I think that probably in the Mayor's Caucus, there's pretty uniform feeling that we have to do something to address our transit challenges in the future. And one of the topics of discussion, which would mirror some of Mayor Anderson's comments, is how do we get dedicated funding? And I think that's where we're way behind our competitor cities, that we have not yet identified how we can get dedicated funding. There's been a lot of discussion in the Mayor's Caucus regarding ways we might be able to do that. As a city mayor, I see my challenge is that at the present time, I don't have anything I can sell. So, I mean, I can talk about dedicated funding all day, and it's not really going to get much traction because I don't have a project that I can link that dedicated funding to. I think it is important to also mention that there are lots of options other than mass transit. And many of those are already happening, such as van pools, such as some ride share, which is probably the easiest way to fix it if we just had a small percentage of people that would share rides. We also have the 91X. Anybody ever heard of the 91X? Well, you need to know about the 91X. 91X is a relax and ride, leaves Williamson Square, has Wi-Fi, TV, stops at one of the routes stops at Vanderbilt, and the other one stops up near the Capitol at the Music City Center there. So that's a great opportunity to use transit. One of the biggest fears that people have if they use mass transit is I can't get home. Well, that's built into the system, so if there is some type of emergency, there are some opportunities. As a city mayor, we look at people want more walkable, livable neighborhoods, and we're dedicated to that. Housing and transit are just so directly linked. I would say that. I could go on and on. I better quit because I think I've used my time.
Go ahead, Dave.
Well, I guess I'm the one that's supposed to take this money and get the work done. And funding is really the biggest issue that I have to deal with. But what we need to be doing is we have to, as been mentioned, with Michael's presentation, the mayors, we've got to look at more multimodal transportation modes. We have just entered into an agreement with a consulting firm. As we do our next major thoroughfare plan update, we have changed, excuse me, we're changing that to other than just roadways. We're looking at a comprehensive transportation network approach, which is going to look at land use and multimodal transit, the whole 9 yards, and put it all into the one plan versus having things split out. We're working with Debbie Henry and her group with the transit aspect of it. Michael indicated it takes 10, 15 years to get a road project built. I've been working on the extension of Mac Hatcher since the mid-'80s. So that's a little bit longer than the 10 to 15 years. It is an expensive project, I'm well aware of, but it's something that would be of a great benefit. The other thing I'm looking at in the city, as far as the city of Franklin, and actually Bob and I worked on this back in the early 90s, is we have pretty good routes for north-south. We do not have good routes for east-west. Franklin is laid out in a spoke-type system, and we need to be working more on some of our east-west type routes and sort of get away from allowing the natural and man-made physical features such as the interstate and the rivers keep it to crossing to be able to get a better network system in place. We're running out of space for those type things, though, and we need to be looking at in our planning. We need to be proactive. We need to get out there in advance. As been mentioned, once you get built out, you are not able to get right away. We need to get the right away on the front end, and that's one thing I really want to thank my board, the mayors and the aldermen in the past, is we've set right-of-way widths, and we are getting those right-of-ways when development comes in that is going to allow us to actually add lane miles in the future, some. But as we found out recently, Carruthers Parkway, we didn't quite get enough, even though that's the widest right-of-way we've ever gotten. But with what's going on is we're going to have to get more. So that's kind of it. But again, it's back to funding. We're trying to keep up with our fees that are required. We update those every 3 to 5 years. We're in the process of doing it again right now. So that's pretty much, I guess, it for me.
Thank you. I'm here really, or my perspective here is as a transportation planner and traffic engineer in the region over the last 25 years. And really looking at it, I think, I see 3 key issues to me that I think are worth discussing. First is Michael made a very compelling case for the need for more mass transit, and as the mayor said, we need to think more about making our developments more walkable. And I think what we're talking about is will take a true philosophical shift in how we think about travel. I mean, I don't think any of us is looking forward to that doubling our time in traffic, and yet we spend a lot of time talking about more mass transit and how we need it. But when it really comes down to trying to make it happen, I think we're not at that point as a region philosophically where most people are still thinking about how they get someplace in their car. And as we move on in time, we're going to have to change that to where we're thinking more about maybe where do we live so that our travel patterns are shorter. As Dave mentioned, maybe some ideas about how we carpool or utilize buses for schools, for kids to travel to school. I think, so the main thought there is to move away from the idea that I'm going to get in my car and drive. And as you know, if you've been in other larger cities, and I mean, New York City is the best example. Most people there, they don't think about driving their car. And a lot of people don't even have a car. So we're a long way from that standpoint, but I do think we really need to start as a region and as communities, start thinking more about how we travel and not just blindly thinking, okay, I'm always going to drive and I'm going to continue to drive where I'm going over the next 10, 15, 20 years. I think the second issue, and has been mentioned by everybody, is funding. And primarily, we've talked about the funding from a local perspective, but I think it's important for everybody also to understand that there's a real crisis looming and about to hit us on the federal level with funding, because the Highway Trust Fund, which is always been the reservoir for our spending on roadway and transportation projects, is about to go broke, and we're going to need to have federal legislation to shore that up and to keep that going. And I mean, if anybody here believes that we're going to get a lot of agreement up at the federal level, I'd like to talk to them because I don't have a lot of confidence about that. But it really is a crisis, and that's something that needs to be dealt with. As the mayor's mentioned, the dedicated funding sources are really what we need if we're going to see additional infrastructure spending and more money into mass transit in the future. And what a number of communities have done is identify specific projects and, such as a light rail line or a bus rapid transit line and other roadway improvements, and then identify a funding source through some kind of a dedicated fund, whether it's an additional fee on something like emissions testing or some type of a tax. That's the way a number of communities have funded some major transportation. And I think what we're going to see, even if we do solve or get some solutions at the federal level, I think we're going to see, as time goes, more transportation funding shifting down to the local and state level. So we're going to have to be willing to do that. And I think particularly when we think about how do we get that done, we've got to think about putting people in place in our elected leadership, particularly at the state and federal level, who have that vision to fund transportation, similar to the way we did with the interstate system, where we built a great transportation network over 20, 30 years. We've got to do this for the next level of transportation. And that takes a lot of leadership and dedication. The final thing I would say is there are some solutions out there that I think we're going to see that are interesting, and particularly with the use of technology. Things like connected vehicles and driverless vehicles are on the horizon, and they will be part of our transportation system before we know it. Other technologies like apps that enable people to carpool easily or find empty parking spaces, whether on the street or in parking lots, things like that. I think what we're going to see is with technology, the way it moves so quickly, that we're going to be traveling in a whole lot different ways than even we probably can imagine now. So I think there are some real opportunities with technology as we move in the future.
Thank you, gentlemen. I know I've got a million questions, and I hope you all do, but I'd like to open it up. If you've got questions for these gentlemen, or if you've got ideas that you think they haven't thought of that you would like to challenge them with, sure.
I have a question. It's basic. It might go to Dave Crocker. I'm going to say, when you're in your planning of your cities and your county areas, say your subdivisions, and they're coming in and they're, wanting the roads and this and that. Majority of times, they will only have 2 entrances and exits. And when you're trying to come out on major roadways, you're always vying, for that spot to get right or left. What can we do as leaders in this area? What can we do to make it easier? And say you had a transit area and you were trying to get to park someplace there. How can we make it easier for people to get out onto major roadways?
David?
Well, the simple solution is that we build a transportation network versus individual driveways or access into subdivisions. Connectivity, in other words. You have more than one route to go in and out. The one thing, you're talking about 2 accesses on a major road. Of course, what we have in the city of Franklin is access control, and we're trying to space accesses such that you're not having continuous type accesses, which may lead to, in some cases, 2 accesses for one particular road based on the road frontage. But we're basing what we do on road frontage to cut down on the interaction or the conflicts between the traveling public. But again, it's interconnectivity a network system versus cul-de-sacs. And I consider a subdivision, it may have 500 houses. If it's only got one major access, that's a cul-de-sac with 500 houses on it. The other thing to help with this, I think, is we look at innovative ways of designing our intersections, such as, Mike went out. But such as having more like traffic circles, roundabouts, something that can keep the traffic moving, but it has to be designed correctly. I know there is some places in the area where people can bring up that traffic circles are not working. I would say to you that that's mainly because it probably was not designed correctly. But that's...
The only backup question I had, and I know there are others that have a question, is safety. And that relates to all of you, because the safety of our citizens are I think the most important point ever. And we need to make sure that, our children can get to school and of course, we can get to work and parks and areas that we do. And I am concerned about the safety of certain roads. And that's an open question, but I appreciate your answer.
Gentlemen, any comments on safety? Ken, Rogers?
We're for it.
Gary?
Dave, I want to compliment the two mayors, their staff, their road people, and everyone here for what they do for us in this county and in the city of Franklin. But I do have a question for County Mayor Anderson and Ken. What is the number one priority in your mind for the roads in Williamson County and the city of Franklin?
Gary, can you elaborate on that when you say number one priority?
You have a major project in Williamson County that's on the very front burner of what you feel like needs to be done and the same. And by the way, Ken, thanks for getting my catcher rolled up a little bit. I sit through there this morning. Go ahead, Roger.
Several years ago, all of us as mayors got together. The state was asking us, what's your number one priority? And I think this is where you're going with your question. And I can lay out a few basics. To the Brentwood residents, it was Concord Road. To Franklin, for the most part, it was McCatcher and this little road right out in front, behind me. Spring Hill, it was this. Fairview, it was this, etc. But ultimately, for all of us to have to make a decision and send up to our legislators was to get the completion of I-65 north and south from Brentwood to Murray County. And collectively, we expressed that to our delegates and representatives that that was our number one priority. When Governor Haslam came in, and then consequently Commissioner Schroer, we echoed that one more time to them. That was our number one priority, to get traffic up and down I-65 South, which was going to require lanes, bridge, etc. As you have heard many people say, TDOT does not borrow money to build roads. I think it's a great thing. They do their projects in phases so that they can take those dollars they get to spread them out. But it still is today, 65 South and North is a high priority. It is scheduled to be completed. Now our emphasis have got to shift as a regional group to Franklin. They've got their priorities, and to Brentwood, they've got their priorities. Maybe the question should be asked to all of us as elected officials, what's your number one priority for handling transportation slash different transportation issues? How are we all going to get on the same page? And that's the $64,000 question. Kim?
Well, I think the citizens of Franklin and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen would tell you the number one priority in transportation is Mac Hatcher Northwest Extension. And that's the correct answer, I think. But I think that we have to think a little further than just Mac Hatcher, which is an important link to get people around Franklin rather than through Franklin. We've got to continue to get people walking more, connecting health and walkability, getting people out of their cars, and also creating those multimodal opportunities and choices for people rather than just thinking about the car first. Everybody this morning probably drove here in a single occupied vehicle, and you know, it's a pain in the rear to call up Gary and say, Gary, would you pick me up this morning? So
That's not directed at Gary, though, is it?
then why didn't you pick me up, Roger?
I mean, you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
We are, it's 9 o'clock. That's the fastest 90 minutes I've ever had in my life. And I'm going to respect your time and particularly our speaker's time and go ahead and informally call a conclusion to our discussion this morning. I wish we had another hour to do this. Please fill out these cards. We would like to have your name. We'd love to have your email address. We'll be looking for volunteers to take on various pieces of the puzzle if we move forward on this. What the chamber can do, that's a good question for you all. If you've got ideas about how we should be involved in this, we'd like to hear those. We do have, I think Glenn Casta was here, there's a town meeting tonight with our state legislative delegation. Be a great time to go talk to them and just echo some of the things we've talked about this morning. It's tonight at 6:30 at the Franklin Elks Lodge, so I'd suggest that you be aware of that and put that on your calendar. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time here. We got a distinguished panel up here, and again, I wish we had much more time to talk to them. Michael, you know, you scared us, and that I guess that's your job, and we appreciate it though. The chamber staff couldn't do these things without them. Cindy, Jenna, we appreciate all your work to pull this together. Spark, couldn't do it without you, John. Thank you so much for this facility. And Channel 3, Newt and his crew are going to have this on the air, and we'll try to get those times out to you if you want to take some more notes from what happened today or mention this to some of your friends. We'll stay here as long as everybody wants to, but I'm going to go ahead and dismiss you, and we will keep you informed as to where this is going, if anywhere. I hope it goes somewhere, and we'll try to take it from here and come up with some initiatives to hopefully move some of these things forward. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Welcome to Poets from the Neighborhood. I'm Victoria Clausey.
And I'm Erin Glass. We hope that you enjoy the poems we'll be reading today, poems written by your friends and neighbors. The first poem I'm going to read is The Way Next Coming by Victoria Clausey. I live in the country, far from the grit of the city. I live scolded by mountains, shaped by owl hoot. I live closer to the ground every year and closer all again to not knowing. The door is open to my backyard and the woods have never been noisier. Bodhisattvas showing up every few days like unsolvable square roots. Soon I'll be giving up the roaming I loved, corridors of the state, small blazes and warm smells, rootedness I've never stopped wanting, my father's black hair, my mother's unkempt mind. And that boy I've loved with dazzling ferocity will become the shape of memory. Wanderer he, wanderer me, melancholy melodies, minor keys, weight of season after tender season.
Morning and Night by Jeff Harden. Beyond our town, the bottomlands flood each year. Someone's son goes walking, never comes back. Weeks pass. Town square talk reclaims the days. Tonight I hear the rain remember roots and think of elders gone the long way back to dust. What we know by heart, we doubt the most. I have a wish to be at someone's door, unannounced, but welcomed anyway, ushered in to dine and sing the sleep of kings. But this is a world of slaughtered saints. Random shots are fired, while morning and night our mothers turn their faces toward the sleeping hills. So quickly has the century come and gone. For a while, let's ask each other simple questions and make up answers that can keep us home tonight.
Abiding by Victoria Clausey. Watch me, Planck might say, as I watch you, watching me, and remain unchanged. Remain anything of yourself, not the desire to watch, desire that changes itself in its desiring. Belong to this world. The wren sizes you up, the kingfisher trusts nothing of your intentions, the mallard lays her eggs under your porch steps, and the possum sucks them dry. The milkweed worries itself to seed, sap, and pod, all in the same season. And you watch me watching. I like a world like this, as the knee likes distance between itself and the floor to disappear.
I Have a Dream by Vera Jaar. I have a dream, voice of the peacemaker still echoes around the world. Choices and hands extended, still egos, clash with no boundary. I have a dream, the resonating words still echo. Upon the hills, across the oceans, still searching for that peace that is free.
A Day of Slow Rain by Jeff Harden. On a day of slow rain, the translucence of leaves reminds me, as a child, I wanted wisdom. Now that I'm a man that forgets his raincoat, I don't seem to mind. It makes good sense to scan the margins of books. The notes penciled in might enlighten the text. An asterisk or a question mark could change my whole life. Remember staring at hen eggs, waiting for them to hatch? Then the next day, the school desk and theories of time, leaves in the water, cleaned out by hand. Some things can't be improved. The Gospel of Luke, the size of a blueberry, the taste of ripe plums, a quick leap over, ferns on a makeshift path. It was always a life of inconceivables and afterthoughts, a soundlessness to follow just after the bell chimes. Some mornings, the breath of horses was the only thing to say.
Thrush by Aaron Glass. The thrush may return, but they never look back. The wisp of crabgrass will crawl right into your hand, because grace can make any blade gentle. One night I will wake and be spared and not know from what. They say my fate is like a doll's captured face, too wronged to go back, too estranged to be managed. My days can't be mirrored unless they mend by the moon. Either way, there's a record, and it's carried on the backs of horses. It is carried in a splinter of snow. But how do we inhabit this fragmented life? How do we blot out the sun with just one finger?
Share One Earth by Vera R. We are all the same deep down in the heart. We all seek happiness, but go different routes. We yearn for peace, wish for heavenly bliss, yet we fight each other in endless, pointless battles. Green and blessed earth, one together that we share, land that is divided, but joined by the oceans, one. One moon for the night for all, one sun to share with all. Help raise one another, all nations, not just us.
You'd sit on a porch like I've got, if you had one. You'd get up early before the dog moves, before the birds begin their pick and rolls, before admitting to yourself you're so absurdly happy it has to be offensive to those without a porch. You'd watch intently the tucked back ski pose wings of the dirt dauber, the fence post stepping forward out of the dusk light. People without porches, how do you hear yourselves think? You spend your days, honestly, without counting breaths divided by the number of starling flights? You live without the insurrection of daily sitting still? No following one thought tumbleweeding through a notebook? Unreal the kind of fortitude you must possess. You ought to think about some set-aside time for the world, with all things small-winged, a sycamore limb almost not quite reaching the ground. Exhilarating these finest moments, thought like forsythia going wild on a breezy day, warble and rococo, porchboard moan, larkspur whisperings, gladiola glad-handing the wind, with too few onlookers adding their own. Thank you for watching. We hope you'll join us again for Poets from the Neighborhood.